There you go. And I think everyone's just slowly connecting to audio, but thank you for joining and welcome to this session on supporting refugees and displaced people to develop real-world English skills. I'm Ben Webster, the CEO of Mosaik Education, one of the organisers of the session. And we're an NGO that supports refugees to reach university. This session is part of the Catalysing Change Week, and I'm going to hand over to Nikita to tell you a little bit more about that, and then we're going to kick off with our focus on English language teaching.
Thank you, Ben, and yeah, welcome to this session. We're delighted that you are all here today, and since I'm a Catalyst 2030 spokesperson, I won't steal your time and we'll just show you a short intro video about what is a Catalyst and who we are.
Catalyst 2030 is a movement of social entrepreneurs and innovators embracing collective action to achieve the SDGs by the deadline of 2030. Our 1,500 members are active in 197 countries. By emphasizing collaborations, Catalyst 2030 is leveraging the power of the collective to accelerate real change in the lives of billions of people around the globe. What do our members say about Catalyst?
Catalyst 2030 is an invaluable global community of impact entrepreneurs.
Our relationship with Catalyst 2030 has really taught us the power of co-creation.
Join Catalyst 2030 and network, bond, and collaborate with our family members.
And I like the spirit of bringing engagement us together to share and learn from each other.
Catalyst really understands the transformative nature of collaboration.
It's also a platform that can give us new tools and resources.
Catalyst 2030 has put my work on steroids.
But most importantly, to come up with solutions that are practical, ways where we can really make things happen, because social entrepreneurs are doers.
Are you a catalyst? Join us to achieve the SDGs.
Thank you for this reaction. So yeah, thanks again and welcome to this wonderful session. And I'll just share in chat short information about the application form and how you can become a part of the Catalyst, and yeah, how we can unite our strengths to achieve the SDGs by 2030. Thank you, and back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Nikita. Yeah, there was certainly is large enthusiasm for that video I heard in the background of the audience there. So thanks for sharing that. So yes, our session today is focused on supporting refugees to develop English language skills. I'm going to introduce the event very briefly and talk about who's involved and what the rationale was. And then I'm going to hand over to a fantastic panel of teachers, importantly, given what we're talking about. So this event was organized by Mosaik, along with 3 fantastic partners: Arizona State University, the Connected Learning and Crisis Consortium, and the University of Reading Center for Literacy and Multilingualism. The background and our rationale for this event really was to address a common topic and a challenge that comes up in our programs. And that is the tension between knowledge of language skills, so the grammar, the vocabulary, the technical side of learning a language, and on the other side, the ability to use that language to communicate and apply that language and leverage it for accessing employment or education. And often the needs of young people pull in one direction, the day-to-day needs of young people pull in one direction, whilst international and national exams and curricula will pull in the other. And we wanted teachers to lead this session because they are on the front line there, the people that are actually helping achieve the SDGs. So we wanted them to be sharing their voices, their experience, and their ideas and challenges in co-creating solutions. It comes at an important time because we are at the stage where we have the largest refugee and displaced persons population since World War II. And for these communities adapting to new societies and education systems, English is often crucial in accessing tertiary education, completing secondary, improving their livelihood opportunities, or accessing training. And as well as co-creating ideas and solutions as part of this session, we're hoping that we're going to be able to take the ideas from this session forwards to a larger conference later this year, in partnership with the University of Reading, and that will focus on language teaching in refugees. And that itself is a nice link to pass over to the moderator for our panel today, Tony Capstick of the University of Reading. So over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for that warm introduction, and to Makita for your welcome and for allowing us to be part of the Catalyst community that we just heard about. So I'm Dr. Tony Capstick. I am a researcher at the University of Reading in the UK, where I teach modules relating to language and migration. So most of the students are either teachers or people with a particular interest in the issues that we're talking about today. So I teach in the UK, but I research in low resource settings. So I'm interested in parts of the world, normally in developing country contexts, where refugees and displaced people find themselves moving to. So most of my research has been in the 4 countries neighboring Syria. But I've also done research in sub-Saharan Africa. So today, the idea is that I will be in conversation with teachers who are currently or very recently involved in those kinds of English language teaching projects that Ben just mentioned, focusing on innovation and trying to identify what works, as well as perhaps some of the challenges. Will be the focus of our conversations. And what better place to start really than just to find out a little bit about who each of our teachers are and a little bit about their backgrounds. So I'm just going to introduce each teacher and let them say a little bit about where they are in the world. So I'll go around my screen, and Ahmed is first. Ahmed, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you guys for acknowledging our teachings. And I'm delighted to share my experience with you. And I'm Ahmad, I'm Sudanese. I grew up in the part of Sudan where the war taking place since 2003. And the place is, nobody cares about English. Yes. The local languages and the Arabic, the official language. And so I was one of the luckiest refugees here in Jordan, and I just met Ben in early 2019 maybe. And so I studied with the Mosaik education, one of the students. And then after several trainings, such as British Council teaching training and Doma training, so with my colleagues, we became English teachers for our beloved community, refugees community in Ahmad, Jordan. And currently I base in Ahmad, Jordan. And so since in beginning of the COVID-19, we started teaching English online. And so it's kind of really strange for us because like we, as teachers, we don't train to teach online, or we don't have like experience teaching online. But those like the Mickey and Mr. Scott, Frankie, those guys, like they train us to how to use like the online platforms to teach like Zoom. And so like now we reach the place where we can be able to share our experience with the panelists like you guys and to learn also from you. This is amazing opportunities like we had before, and we are still learning about how we could teach in better ways in future. And of course, we expecting more development trainings for teachers.
That's great, Ahmed. Thank you. Thank you. You've already identified some of the trainings that hopefully we'll get to during this session, where you can tell us a little bit more about maybe the dogma training or some of the other trainings and what it's like to be teaching in Jordan. Thanks. Thank you. Bonita is next. Bonita, do you want to say a few words about who you are and where you are?
Yes, Tony, thanks for the opportunity. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone, depending on where you are. Bonita, Sandrine Murundi. I'm right now in Rwanda, and I'm sitting in a Kiziba refugee camp. I'm sorry, I forgot to put on my video, but still, I have a problem that here is during COVID and I cannot put off the face mask. Yeah, so briefly, I'm working at Kepler. So Kepler has two campuses, Kepler Kigali and Kepler Kiziba. I'm now in Kepler Kiziba. I got a chance of being in both of them. I graduated in Kepler Kigali, and I'm now working in Kepler Kiziba in the refugee camp. Yeah, it's in Karongi district, for those who can check it out on the map. And yeah, so I've been here for roughly almost like 2 years teaching here. I've not been moving. I'm a recent graduate, but I've not been teaching only in this area, because as I was still a student, I was also a teaching assistant, which makes it a great big CV for me to talk about teachers' challenges and contribute to what Crystal is working on with their goals. Yeah, and I'm so glad to be here. I expect to learn from everyone, and I'm really so interested in everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Bonita. So we've already heard how COVID has influenced the teaching situations that we work in. So we'll definitely be coming to that as one of the challenges that most of us are facing in our work. Okay, if I could just now move on to Huda. Huda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. How are you? I'm Huda Ali. I live in a Palestinian camp in Lebanon. I'm 26 years old. I have been teaching for about 4 years, English for grade 2 and 3. And this year I teach biology and chemistry and physics for grade 7 and 8. I have many challenges in teaching the refugee, especially I'm also a refugee, and sometimes we face problems in speaking and communication, especially our school, the schools we used to learn in it, we don't speak in English a lot. So I have the same problems, but I used to work on myself in English to be able to communicate to many times. So when you will ask me about the challenge that I'm facing, I will tell you everything.
Great. Okay, so we'll get to that in a moment. So hopefully for the audience, we've got a sense there of these different parts of the world that our three teachers are working in. But already what is emerging from those short introductions is that there are some similarities in the kinds of challenges. Some are around technology and the way that we all moved to more online ways of teaching and learning during COVID. Some of them are relating to the role of English in particular countries. So Lebanon, Jordan, Rwanda, English will have a different role, either as an official language perhaps, or as a medium of instruction in schools or in universities. So there are definitely overlapping issues between these very different geographical locations. And what we'll do now is we'll try to focus in on some of the challenges and then move to the solutions. So hopefully the majority of our session today will be talking about solutions and innovations. But let's establish first what some of these challenges are. If I could just ask audience members, if you could make a note of any questions or comments or responses to anything that comes up, either put that in the chat and we can come to it later, and that will form some of the prompts for our conversations after these initial introductions. Or, you know, there's a reasonably small group here, so it would be great to have you come onto mic or put your video on and ask your question or make your comment to you can come through me, I'll moderate, but if you have specific questions for specific teachers, then that would be great. Or if you have a general question that you want to pitch to all the teachers, then that would also be really good to hear from you. So do make a note of questions in the chat as you go along, or we can use the microphone and video function. So I think what I'll do is I'll go back through the order that we just went through for the introduction. So starting with Ahmed, and then Bonita, and then Huda. If you could just select one of the main challenges that you face in the teaching of English in your context. Obviously, there'll be different parts to these challenges, and classrooms are, you know, one of the reasons why we enjoy teaching is because they're such interesting places, and they're different. Every lesson is different to the previous lesson. But if you could try and focus in on one specific challenge, so that all of us and the audience can get a picture of what that challenge is all about. So let's go back to Ahmed. If you could kick us off with a challenge you face in your teaching.
Yes, so in the early of COVID-19, so we had like a lot of challenges. Like one of the main challenges, how to use like the technology for teaching, and also for the learners, the lack of familiarities of using technology for studying. These are the main areas. And as you guys know, like the refugees, always they have a lot of challenges, not just the only challenge about the studying or using their devices to study. So, but it is always been kind of not the refugees' priority to learn how to use this, like to use the technology to learn. But so the teachers, as we encourage, and we used our experience to share with them, to let them know how to use the technology for teaching, for studying, and also as well, we as the teachers also we cooperated, like learning from one another, and also from the Mosaik team and others. We still need some support of these like trainings, but and somehow we are able to like manage to teach.
Yeah.
Online.
Okay, so what does it, do you want to describe to us, Ahmed, what does a Mosaik English lesson look like? If I joined you for one of your lessons, what would I see happening? What kinds of activities or what kinds of skills are you practicing?
Yes, that is a great question. So the Mosaik education is different. The method that we are using, like Doma methodology, so which is like allows the teacher to use like various of resources, various of topics that will engage the students and let the student more participate. So studying English, the most important part is how to communicate in English. So when when the student able to communicate, it is more easily to.
Hi, Diego. So I'm in the office and there's nobody here. So there's no chance to get the guys from African Media to talk about the connections with them. So I would say, if it's okay for you.
Is that Justine? I think your mic's on,
that's
Justine.
okay and we found a cable, the cable that you wanted. So we can set that up and then perhaps.
Somebody's mic's on. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Could you all silence your mics apart from Ahmed? It worked.
Yeah, thank you. So I mean, like, it is more about the emergent language. It's more about we are teaching the relevant language for the learners, which is about their cultures, about what they want to study. So some of them they study English for work. Some of them they want to study English for higher education. So we are using the Doma methodology for whatever the students are interested. So we are like flexible with the student to teach whatever they want to learn. So we don't have like the curriculum that will bring topics about different countries, about different contacts to teach them, but we are teaching the relevant language for the students.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to stop you there because I think it'll be really interesting for others in the room to hear about the Doma methodology, because I think that's one of your Mosaik's innovations, isn't it? How to use those real world settings and that real world language that's at the center of the learner's life, rather than, you know, very established traditional course books. So we'll come back to Doma later on. So thanks Ahmed. Moving on to Bonita, would you like to just describe one of the challenges you face?
Yeah, of course, I would like to share. Thanks, Tony, again. Highlighting only one is really hard, but I'll go ahead with it. So in our program, students join with different backgrounds of the native speaking, because we have native Congolese here. We also have students from the marginalized communities who speak Kinyarwanda as their native language. And most of them speak Swahili and French. So when they're joining the program, they have different levels of English speaking and they have different skills. But trust me, most of them are struggling because they're still fresh and they really need to learn, yet they're at the university level. So it's kind of challenging for you to feed all the information of English at that level when they've just joined. And we have to make sure that our program fits in to have graduates that are competitive at the job market. So that's the main difficulties that I see, because when students also reach home, they're not eager to speak in English with their relatives who don't speak English. Some of them don't even know that. So they're obliged to use their native languages still, which is also part of the things that is causing a very big gap for the students to be able to catch up and learn English quickly. Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge. And I don't know if you would like me to immediately share how we're overcoming it, but
we'll get to that, Bonita. No, that's really clear. I think what you've done there is you've described, you know, most of the world is multilingual. You know, we have very monolingual language policies in schools, in universities, for lots of historical reasons. But, you know, the reality on the ground is that most learners of English already have some kinds of proficiency in more than one other language. And particularly in the kinds of refugee settings that we're all interested in today, that's particularly salient because, you know, often we're teaching learners that have come from different parts of the region, and we're helping them to engage with target language in English, but they may bring different multilingual resources to their learning. So I completely agree. That is one of the main challenges for the kinds of work that we're all involved in. So we'll come to some of the solutions in a moment or two, but for now, if we could move to Huda. Huda, could you describe one of your challenges?
The student I'm teaching belongs to poor and educated families. Their families don't know how to speak or write in English or understand English at all. So the students think that English is very difficult because their families don't know English. They convince themselves that they also will not be able to study English at all. So this is one of the biggest problems I'm facing. Also, the Lebanese curriculum is not good. It's poor. It lacks the listening and speaking skills. So many private schools used to change it and not follow it at all. We as teachers also face problem because we need workshops to teach us how to deal with like these students. How can we explain for students who are not able to speak or write English at all? So this is the problem that I'm facing. Also, we are not used to communicate all the time in English, so sometimes we face many problems. And how can you explain that lesson in English for students, for example, in grade 1, and they don't know English? You can say that they know what's your name, how old are you, and many simple things. So how can we explain the lesson in English if I know that the students in front of me do not understand English? Like I'm using to speak in Arabic in front of you, you will not able to understand anything. Do you understand what I mean?
Thanks. Yeah, that's really clear. Yes, thanks, Huda. You've raised some kind of overlapping challenges there, aren't there? There's issues around the socioeconomic status of families, poor families who will have had different kinds of access to education in their own past, and how those kinds of trajectories and those intergenerational relationships impact on their children and teenagers learning English. There can be quite a gap there between the role of English in a previous generation and the role of English now, particularly as we work increasingly online. But I also was really interested that you mentioned writing as well. You mentioned literacy. And I think that is such a complex skill to help our learners develop. It's not a priority on all English language projects, but it tends to be a significant skill, particularly as most of you have mentioned the job market and access to higher education. So if you need to get into university, if you're a displaced person, perhaps you already had a place at university and you're trying to get back into university, some of the work that Mosaik does is with those particular learners. Or if you're a younger learner, and as in Lebanon, as in Huda's context, where the curriculum, the school is delivered in English or French, and you may be an Arabic speaker from Syria with very, very little experience of learning English, then how do you develop the kinds of literacy skills that will allow you to then write your assignments in English? So that's an interesting area for us to now move into as we move into the solutions. I mean, solutions is a bit strong. As teachers, we're always really experimenting with new ways of working, new methods, new activities. So they won't be solutions for all of us, but they are potentially have some benefit when we think about some of the context that we're working in. So I wonder if we could just pause now, and I'll just give everybody opportunity to either add a comment or a question to the chat, and then I can come back to those in the remainder of the session. Or if anybody had any initial questions, you could come onto mic or onto video and ask your question now. If not, I will keep moving, and I will I will go back to Ahmed. Ahmed, you were telling us about the technological challenges that you face. Now, what I know of the Dogma method, you're trying to bring in very authentic, real world settings into the language learning environment. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit more. I think somebody, is it Sheena has mentioned this in the chat. If you could just share with us a little bit more about how Dogma works.
Yes, so I've tried different methods, but Dogma is easy for teachers to use it because it's like unlimited. It has unlimited resources because the main resource to use students as main resource. So using their what they want to study. So what they already know a little bit about it. And let's say, for instance, let's say like the social issues, like let's say early marriage. So in here in Middle East is one of the major issues that like every community facing. So like when you introduce this topic in the class, the learners are more engaged. So everybody want to like explain, complain, and give their opinion about the early marriage, because most of the students or the young generation, they don't like the idea of early marriage. So that will be the topic, will be the conversationals. So everybody will just wanted to participate, to speak. Even like most of the sessions will run out of times because they want to know a lot of questions. Like all our students also from different countries, more than 6 or 7 countries. They want to know, like compare the difference between their countries and the other countries, the culture, how they receive or how they deal with early marriage. So this is the advantage of using the Dogma method in the teaching. Also, like it's build confidence in the students because they are going to learn something that already they know or they are passionate to know.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important part of our work, isn't it? I think when we work with displaced people, we never, we don't want to assume that all of them have been in conflict settings, but many will have, and many will have had to cope with, quite significant adversity in their lives. So that idea of building resilience, building confidence, and enabling those learners to feel as though they're learning English in a safe environment, I think is absolutely core to the work that we do. Obviously, it's important to all classroom settings, but as you said, Ahmed, it's particularly important to these young men and women's lives. And that's particularly challenging, isn't it, when you have people from very different backgrounds. And I think what's quite nice about what you were saying is how, if they're bringing authentic language use into that setting, then they're already invested in those identities that are, they're sort of constructing and developing in the language learning. And so they see themselves authentically represented in the language of the lesson. So that's a nice example, I think, of
in addition,
how it can help. Yeah.
Just one word, like, so the Dogma method is not just only teaching English, it also like raising awareness among the students, and also they allow the student to learn more about their cultures, the other cultures, that is, they become more aware of, they will apply what they learn directly to with their family members, with their friends, because most of the topics is matter for them, it's important for them. When they finish from the class online session, most of them directly, they will go and do some research about the topic, and they get more information. They become aware of the topic or of the issue that they are wanting to know about it.
Thank you for that. That helps us sort of understand maybe what we can go to Bonita to talk about now. So you mentioned understanding other cultural practices, Ahmed. And again, I think that's something that always strikes me as, you know, an area that we can all learn from those particular kinds of classrooms because of the sort of rich, diverse cultural practices that we see in those lessons. You know, I work in the UK at the moment, and so it's always a relief for me to be in refugee settings, for example, in those countries neighboring Syria, because I see so much more creativity. I see learners sharing their ideas, they're sharing their ways of understanding the world, they're bringing all of that cultural knowledge to, like you say, to their language learning. So it becomes a really quite a rich environment where I believe that, you know, there's things that we can learn from that kind of creativity. And that's something that I've been involved in with teachers in refugee settings, using some of the materials from the refugee settings in English as a second language classroom in the UK, trying to sort of disrupt that very sort of, I don't want to say colonial, but those kinds of very traditional ways of understanding the West has the pedagogy and we're going to share that with the rest of the world. Whereas there's lots of opportunities to share pedagogical solutions from those parts of the world and bring them into classrooms elsewhere. So I think on that point, I'm going to move to Bonita, who told us about the challenge that she faces with these very multilingual classrooms. So you talked about the different levels. So students may have some background in English already. They may be literate in English, they may be literate in their first languages, or they may not. So I just wondered, I'm going to put you on the spot now, Bonita, but what kinds of classroom materials, what sorts of activities would you recommend to teachers maybe in very different parts of the world, but who have very multilingual learners? What kinds of activities work well in your classrooms?
Thank you so much. I'll start with the resources, then come up with the activities that we normally use. For our English classes, we normally have two parts of English. So we have one that is called communications. This one deals with having students studying, but it's all about writing, focusing on writing. And we also have the English class focusing on speaking. For a student to graduate, they have to have passed through both of these. So when they are in the communications class, we use a platform called iExcel Pathways. It has different levels depending on a person, from first until level 12. And it has in different activities that people can do, learning verbs, adjectives, everything depending on the level of a student. So what makes it engaging is that it's self-paced. A student does it on their own pace. So the one who is not struggling doesn't need to wait for a student who is struggling to complete. So as long as you who's not struggling, you're done with your activities, with your work, you come do the final assessment. The final assessment is prepared by me. Then you get to pass that so that you go ahead with the English classes. You go for the speaking. You first start with the writing so that you can know how to speak it better. But as you're learning how to write, you also learn how to speak. But we make sure that you also get to have the exposure of speaking so that you learn the public speaking as well. So iExcel is one of the best resource that we use. And when it comes to the supporting system or how we do it, in our classes, we make sure that we have engaging classrooms that have differentiation. When I talk about differentiation, I mean supporting students depending on their specific needs or depending on their levels they're on. So we learned that this is very good because when you're planning activities, when a teacher is planning the activities, they also include every student you know that you have struggling students, you know that you have strong students. We also have to make some group works. In every class, you might create like a group work. When I say differentiation, there is group work. There might be also individual work. Then you have turn and talk, where you tell students, you give them a topic, then they turn and talk to each other about the topic that you've given them, and you hear their ideas, hear their point of views. So group works is common everywhere, but some of the other thing that we do differently is calling students for office hours. So we have a time specifically for supporting students, and you call them to come and you support them individually, depending on what they're struggling with. Something else that we introduced in our class is creating a learning environment where every student is okay with correcting the other student's mistake. For example, right now that I'm sharing, then if I speak a mistake, Tony stops me, then he helps me to correct the mistake I made, then I move on, and we've made it a habit and a culture, and everyone is familiar with it here because they love it when someone corrects them. Yeah, I think I've said a lot, and part of the main thing that helps us better is mandating students to speak English on campus, because we're having an issue that when they go home, they don't get a chance to speak English. So the less time we're having them on campus, we mandate them to speak English on campus. Yeah, I think
thank you, Bonita. Yeah, I like the way that a lot of those activities are integrated, aren't they? That I can see how you've really thought through, you know, not just the sort of formal activities, but those moments elsewhere on the campus, elsewhere in the curriculum, perhaps, the office hours, the peer-to-peer correction. These are all, I think, they're all sort of innovations that kind of fit together really nicely, because it consolidates what's occurring or what's happening in each of those different settings. So I think that they're really good examples. When you were describing that move from speaking to writing, it reminded me of there's a British broadcaster and writer and teacher and educator called Michael Rosen. He works with younger learners to the ones that you were describing, but he's got a wonderful book called Did I Hear You Right? And instead of it being right as in correct, R-I-G-H-T, it's right as in the verb W-R-I-T, did I hear you right? And he has a show on Radio 4, which is a BBC radio channel, where he talks weekly about some of the issues we're talking about. How do you work with people from different cultural backgrounds? How do you draw on different languages and bring them into your classroom teaching? So he's also got a great book called Good Ideas for Teachers. So any other thoughts or comments from any of the audience members? Would you like to jump in with responses or agreements, disagreements? Brian, would you like to go ahead, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting hearing not just the complexities of the challenge, but the massively multi-layered complexities of these challenges, which on a day-to-day basis must be enormous. So I'm really keen to know, how do you find space for all this innovation, for these creative solutions? How do you keep going? What drives you, the three teachers on the panel, to keep doing this?
Well, can I go for that? So it's interesting question. So like the teacher for me, like teacher like me, so there's a lot of reasons that we keep moving forward our teaching. So like myself, I'm already have some passion of like teaching someone, you know, like it's really powerful when you teach someone to just realize or understanding their dreams. Let's say, for instance, like some of our students, they get scholarship to study abroad, and the other, they join to the local universities. So like the appreciations and the value that they are putting on the teachers also, the teacher always encouraged by their students' determination of learning the language. So for instance, like some of the students in the refugees camp, so they have like really bad internet connection, and also they don't have a space for learning. Let's say for the session time, they don't have like private room. So, but they try, like during the COVID, it's not allowed to get out from inside the house or the apartment after the 6 p.m. But so some of them, they just push themselves to sit outside their camp and to just attend the online classes. And when you see like these students, they are passionate, so they are willing to learning. So the teacher, there is no excuse for you. And I am also like the other teacher, they spend like hours of like volunteering to teach me. So why I'm not giving back, what I have learned to the students? Because it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just teaching language, it is changing lives. You see, like for other example, like let's say now I just willing to see my siblings, all of them, they just not having like bachelor degree, but I'm willing to see them. They will reach to the master, PhD. So like it's opening. When you teach, you learn more about yourself and also about your culture, about what it's possible to do everything like by the encouragement and responsibilities that we have for our students. So it's our responsibility to make sure they are understanding the lessons, they are moving forward, so they are gaining some experience. Yeah, I hope I answered some of.
Yeah, thanks, Ahmed. I think it's a great question. Huda and Bonita, what motivates you to keep going?
I would go first. Thank you so much. Besides what Ahmed said, for the passion and the patience, it will really be a challenge when you're teaching students who are not willing to learn. So part of the things that we do that also keep us going is holding students accountable to their learning. So when you hold the students accountable to their learning, it's part of the things that makes your work easier. You're showing them why you're doing what you're doing. Tell them why are you doing this, so that they know where they want to see themselves in the future. We do this normally through sharing successful stories. So like we have some times of having to share different successful stories, or we have a careers department here at Kepler that normally brings other students who graduated so that they share part of their experiences. What did you do? What happened? So that as the student is learning what happened to the others, they also get the motivation, they also get a pushing inspiration that pushes them to work beyond the time that they're supposed to be working on, so that they can also gain a better future for themselves. So part of the other thing that Brian mentioned is how do you get the time for the interventions, for the office hours and everything? So I wouldn't say it's just that simple, but it requires you to identify and being aware of the students that you have. So it's always good for a teacher to know the strengths and the weaknesses of their teachers, of their students, sorry, so that you know who is struggling and who is great at this thing, so that when you're planning your schedule, you also schedule some time for supporting those struggling students, because at the end of the day, the success is your success. So you create your own time to have them and support them to reach to the best. Thank you so much.
Huda, would you like to respond to the same question?
It's a simple thing that because they also have the right to learn despite all the difficulties.
I'm not sure if it's my internet connection or Huda's, but I didn't quite catch that. But Brian, you're also in Lebanon, where Huda is teaching. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what motivates you and how you find time to innovate?
Well, one of the many privileges about the work that I do is that I get to work with incredible people, and exactly as as Bonita and Ahmad were saying, you know, what the motivation of those that who you are working with feeds your own motivation, and I massively find that when I'm working with teachers. But I'm also really lucky that I'm not in the classroom day in, day out. That gives me time to breathe a little bit and time to have a bit more objectivity. But also I work across different organizations. So I get the fantastic opportunity to steal great ideas and share them with other people. I can never claim that they're my own, but to be able to kind of be involved in the facilitation of that seeding of ideas of other people's innovations is really quite humbling. And when you see people using things like realia, making up puppets or making up materials, whether it's a physical object or a poster, which is explaining in a sort of micro contextualized way some point of grammar or some point in English. It's just a beautiful thing to see how people are responding, using, even in very low resource context, using what is available in order to achieve exactly what Huda was saying, the right to learning, to quality learning for these children. And sometimes that's about building things. Sometimes that's exactly as Bonita was saying, about using previous learners and building on their experiences as a way to drive and motivate. And also to bring English to everyday life. I've seen some fantastic examples, for example, where people are playing games and running games and sports sessions in whatever limited play space is available, but doing that in English and doing that through English. So just finding every darn excuse to be practicing the use of English, not just copy paste from somebody's ridiculous curriculum model, but actually thinking about real world skills. And what does that mean for children? Well, of course, that means play for children, hopefully in a lot of their time. So what drives me is getting the chance to spot these wonderful things going on and to be able to share some of those ideas on behalf of incredibly innovative, hardworking people.
Thanks, Brian. You put that so well. And I mean, I just want to add one little thing at the end there, and there's no, well, there are reasons, but there's no really good reason why all of that creativity can't be in a curriculum. Unfortunately, when you work with, you know, academic planners and policymakers, it gets drier and drier and less creative the higher up the hierarchy you go. But as you've just described, and as the other teachers have described, that sort of creativity, when we know it works so well, that's the challenge. That's the challenge for us, you know, finding the way to kind of describe that to the people who make decisions about curricula, and bringing in the kinds of activities, pedagogies, methods that we've talked about today, because I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Although unfortunately, when we do work with curriculum planners, some of those creative responses tend to get squeezed out because people say there's no time for them in the curriculum. But I think today's session has hopefully shown that there is time for them in the curriculum, not just in, you know, one country, but in the different countries that our teachers today have been telling us all about. It's almost on the hour, so I would just like to perhaps ask if there's any final questions or comments from anyone before we finish off for today. If you do have follow-up, we could possibly, I don't know if we're sharing the video of this through the Catalyst website for this series of events. So you can find us there. You can also, Google us and search for us online and find additional sort of information sources for the kinds of work that we're all involved in. Mosaik has a wonderful website, and you can go and find more out about the work that Mosaik does in particular. So without any final comments, I'd just like to thank everybody for their time today. Thanks, Ben, for coming up with this idea, and Nikita for allowing us to share our experiences. But most of all, the audience and the teachers. It has been a really, really, really wonderful experience to listen to what's going on in your classrooms. So thanks again. And hopefully, in terms of follow-up, we will be sharing details of our conference looking at language and education in refugee settings that Ben mentioned earlier. When we're able to share details of that with you, we'll let you all know. Okay, but for me, thank you very much, and best of luck with your teaching, everybody.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks to the organizers.